This is the very first fully electric Rolls-Royce, the Spectre. This is the real deal. This will be coming to Rolls-Royce showrooms and on the drives of the mansions of the rich and famous towards the end of next year. But this is my first chance to actually see it in the metal. In the original pictures that Rolls-Royce released, heavily camouflaged, this car looked a lot like the Wraith, like a two-door coupe. And that's really the impression that I got this was going to be. But now actually seeing it, it feels different. We've been told the range will be over 500 kilometers from about 100 kilowatt hour battery. Now those are not insignificant numbers from a car which is, well, as a Rolls-Royce, is already going to weigh a huge amount. The fact they've been able to create one that can do that kind of range and that will probably still drive exactly like a Rolls-Royce, well, it's fairly significant. Obviously, parent company BMW already has experience in making fully electric cars, but this is built on the same platform as the Phantom 8, that architecture of luxury. Now, we've seen that out there for a couple of years in terms of a platform, but this is the first time it's been used for what was probably, it's always its future intention, somewhere to put batteries to power something like this. The grille. On all Rolls-Royces, the grille is one of its most key characteristics, its definition of what you see as the car comes barreling towards you on the road. On Phantom, we saw the Pantheon grille as the first time fully integrated into the front of the car, and this feels like it's more along those veins. But the grille usually allows air to get to a radiator, to cool an engine. There's no engine here. There's nothing to cool. But you can't have a Rolls-Royce without this grille. So this redesigned grille serves a different purpose than a traditional grille. If you look at the vanes inside the grille, instead of just pointing forward and offering a gateway into the car, they're now angled. So this is no longer about channeling air for cooling. This now helps the aerodynamics of the car, channeling air around it. Could the car have done without the grille altogether? Well, mechanically, functionally, probably. But it wouldn't have been a Rolls-Royce. And that's what this car is all about. It has retained everything it still needs to have to be a Rolls-Royce. It's a Rolls-Royce first and an EV second. So while it's recognizably Rolls-Royce, it does feel different and new. These split headlights at the front, while we've seen split headlights on Rolls-Royces before, this feels sharper, more modern. Even the Spirit of Ecstasy, which at first glance looks like the Spirit of Ecstasy, on closer inspection has a more aggressive forward-leaning stance, perhaps pointing towards an electrified future for Rolls-Royce in general. The front feels more muscular over the wheel arch because of the narrowness of this grille. It gives a different proportion to Wraith. It gives a different feel. It's imposing, but in a different way. Now, despite this also being a two-door coupe like the Wraith, where the two look very different is in profile right at the side here. There are some similarities. There's like a speedback roofline, but when you take the three major lines of the car, the roofline or silhouette line, the shoulder line, and this down here, the waft line, it feels more monolithic is the way that Rolls-Royce would describe it. It is imposing. It feels like it has a height, partially due to these wheels, the largest ever fitted to a Rolls-Royce. Although 22s are available, those are 23-inch wheels, and they look every single one of those inches, but not out of place on a car this scale. When you look at it in profile from the side, it doesn't feel like a coupe. It doesn't quite feel like a saloon. It certainly doesn't feel like an SUV. It's somewhere in the middle. And we see that with lots of manufacturers that move into EVs. They somehow discover new body shapes that we haven't seen. And that's because the placement of batteries, as opposed to the placement of an engine, gives you a lot more freedom to discover new spaces. Super coupe is what Rolls-Royce calls it. Coming around to the back, there's some nice touches that add subtlety, but also character to the car. This rear light cluster, while incredibly minimalist, feels so stylish, has this Art Nouveau kind of feel, almost Charles Rennie Mackintosh in its design. Lovely brushed metal on the outside. And that's it in terms of detailing when you come to the back. It's all architectural, it's all built into the body. There's no flourish. It's just functional and beautiful. It's not quite a boat tail in terms of how it tapers, but this two-tone roofline, which is two-tone from this section and this section, this color, by the way, chartreuse, this isn't normally where Rolls-Royce would put a two-tone. Usually it would be this section and this section below. Splitting it this way gives the car an even more tapered look. You can see this line here splits the trunk lid and gives it that narrower feel at the back and muscularity towards the sides. This car doesn't scream EV. It suggests it, but where most doesn't scream EV is on the interior. Now, a lot of manufacturers, when they move from internal combustion engine cars to fully electric cars, make a large distinction for customers that when they get in these new cars, these avant-garde technology cars, that they feel that they've adopted something new. Futuristic touches, lighting treatments, infotainment system changes, all of these things to help people realize that they're part of something new, something different than what they may have driven before. Rolls-Royce has very much gone the opposite way. The interior of this car feels incredibly familiar. To anyone who sat in a Rolls-Royce Ever, I know exactly where every switch is, where every button is. It looks exactly how I would expect any new Rolls-Royce to look. That's not to say there aren't any new touches. These doors, the largest coach doors ever fitted on a Rolls-Royce, 1.5 meters long, now have the option of these little light streaks in there. They're illuminated from behind and kind of echo the star headliner that you can get in a lot of Rolls-Royces now. And what I love about this treatment, and you can have it made bespoke much like the headliner, is that when these are illuminated, they don't just feel like static stars in the sky. They look like streaks, like you've taken long exposure star photography. And while this is a snapshot of the night sky above you, this feels more like the sky is moving around you, that you are passing through a universe. It's a really, really nice touch. And for those with the means to customize it to their own intent, I think they'll get a really, really nice result. Another little touch is a third screen here inside the car. Now, instead of that being an interface for a passenger to engage with the infotainment system or look up nav details, it's part of the design, it's part of the aesthetics of the car. When a customer commissions their Rolls-Royce, they can choose what goes in there. A static or dynamic graphic with either the name of the car, their name, or any kind of artwork that they want to commission in digital form can play up on that screen. Compare that, for example, to Phantom, where a physical piece of art that you commission is built into the dash to make your car entirely bespoke. This is a digital interpretation of that. You can have an artist commission you a digital animation that plays when you get in and out of the car, something made specifically for you. Now, Rolls-Royce doesn't have any intention of integrating something like an NFT into that, so perhaps as a person who's collected a particular NFT or wants to integrate that into their car, into their Rolls-Royce, that would be an option. But I have suggested it to them, and if they start doing it, I will expect a commission. And while that is a new touch, it does feel entirely at home inside a very, very familiar cockpit. And what does that include? Well, obviously, incredibly comfortable seats, exquisite leather, carpets that feel better than any carpet I've ever had in any home. You just want to drive this thing barefoot. Every Rolls-Royce feels like this. It's fantastic. Every surface, every material is of the highest possible quality. And obviously you can customize the colors and trims to your heart's content. But one new thing that Spectre offers is that you will have the ability to change the color of this dial here to match your interior. It's a nice little touch. There's still rear seats, although they're not the most roomy in the world for taking passengers along for you on the ride. But for me, the real question is, how will this car drive? I've been told that Rolls-Royce has, in the same vein as trying to keep the interior feel very much like a Rolls-Royce and trying to keep every detail feel Rolls-Royce first and EV second, the driving dynamics will feel like that as well. When you put your foot down in this car, it's not going to feel like accelerating in a Tesla. It's not going to throw you back in your seat and make you feel queasy and uncomfortable. This will build power the way Rolls-Royces build power. It will get to a high speed quickly, but it will do it with elegance, and it will do it in a way that isn't going to jostle you or your passengers. It's incredibly exciting that Rolls-Royce is taking this leap into EVs, but they haven't done it on a whim. This is only now being done that Rolls-Royce can guarantee a full Rolls-Royce experience to its customers, and one that doesn't feel a million miles from every other Rolls-Royce. And there's nothing wrong with that.